thanks to you all for being here. It means so much to see everybody. Wow. So I want to start with a little bit of talk about what I just did and what I'm going to do for the rest of the night, and then we'll take it from there. So for those of you who don't know a ton about TKA, right, we do two kinds of martial arts. One is a Korean martial art called Tang-Soo-Do. There's a Japanese art called Jiu-Jitsu. So for this exam, this is my 3rd degree black belt. And so for this exam, there are a couple of specific requirements. So for most of our exams, there are four areas we do: forms, fighting, one-step, jiu-jitsu. So I'm required to do something from all 4 of those areas, except for fighting. No fighting necessary. And add weapons and breaking. So that's the format of the 3rd degree exam. And so people have been asking me to lead up to this exam, so like, what do you have to do? And the answer is, I have to impress them enough that they said yes to this exam, and then I have to prep a demo that they don't feel bad about tonight, having said yes to it. So hopefully we're on our way. So there's a lot of material that I'm going to do tonight. So I will be taking breaks. When I'm taking a break, you should feel free to talk, whatever, it's totally fine. And I also am going to take an intermission. I will tell you when it is, but during that time you should feel free to get up, go to the bathroom, whatever. It won't be that long, but for now, you probably won't go to the bathroom. Okay, so a little bit about what I just did. A little bit before the pandemic, I started studying Tai Chi. And so that sort of cold open, right, was the first third of the Yang style Tai Chi form. It's 108 moves long. That was the first third. I don't know if it's actually a third in terms of move count, but it's the first of 3 sections. And so you might know of Tai Chi as like that old thing, that thing that old people do in the park, right? Right? Yeah, right. I see some nodding heads. It's not just that, right? It's also a martial art. In particular, it's a soft style martial art. So the type of karate that we do in TKA is more hard style, right? You do a lot of punching, you do a lot of kicking, straight out of the gate, you throw stuff with a lot of power. Tai Chi is a soft martial art. So you start with a lot of internal development, power generation, those sorts of things. But the idea is that they both meet in the center, right? A soft martial art, eventually you get faster, you start developing power. And a hard martial art, right, any of you who are green belts, blue belts, you've heard your instructor say, like, you have to be softer, right? You have to generate more power by being softer. So forms. This is part of the form section. So forms, in my mind, are sequences of moves that we practice and perform. And there are a variety of reasons why we practice and perform them, but my personal favorite is to develop body control, good mechanics, and good power, right? But the way we practice form in Tai Chi is rather different than in TKA. As you probably noticed, that was very slow relative to TKA standards, and very soft, right? My hands weren't in tight fists, or anything like that. And so one of the things that I started learning as I was practicing Tai Chi was this mode of practicing, and also a lot about power generation, right? At the beginning of TKA, if you take it, again, in TKA class and you learn TKA 1, right? From the very beginning, we talk about this like hip turn way of generating power, right? You generate a lot of power from the hips. And then TKA students get to brown belt, and any of you who've gotten to brown belt know what's coming, right? It's the Nihanchi, and they're these weird forms we kind of like crab walk around and do karate, and you're expected to still generate power, but that hip turn thing all of a sudden doesn't work. So most students get there completely befuddled. I was mystified for years, well past black belt. I was like, what the heck is up with the Nihanchis? And then I started studying Tai Chi. And they have this concept, right? They have different ways of generating power they talk about. One of them is that hip turn that we talk a lot about, but one of them is also, they call it the chest bow. And it's the spine, the chest opening and closing around the spine, right? Using the muscle on the front and back of the chest. And all of a sudden, it like clicked to me. It's like, oh, this is a good reason to work on the Nihanchis because you're developing this kind of power, right, in a TKA context. So that's what I'm going to show. I'm going to show Nihanchi 1 and 2 if you're a brown belt. You know these forms. But I'm going to do them in the same style as a Tai Chi form, right? So that means that what I'm focusing on is the connection, the feeling, the intensity, the energy, the relaxation, but all while being slow, soft, and relaxed. So you'll see, like, my hands are not going to be in tight fists. I'm not going to move very fast, but that power, that energy, that intensity should still be there. Back in a second.